WBC belt that has included Ali, the greatest of all time. They are set and ready to answer who's the greatest of right now. Wilder, Fury 2, here we go.
News of your next fight. Another great question. You know, it looks like that fight July 4th is not going to happen, guys. It's just not going to happen. A lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that, you know, that are just making it not happen. I wish I could. I want to fight for you guys. If I can find a way to do it, I definitely will hop in the ring because I want to entertain. That's what I do. I box. But definitely, I don't see July 4th happening. It can, but I don't see it happening as of right now. Sucks. Yeah.
That's out of the horse's own mouth, folks. It appears that Ryan Garcia's July 4th ring return is off. The fight date has been scrapped. Why? Not completely sure, but given the circumstances, I can make a few inferences. I can take a few educated guesses.
Like what?
You know, before COVID-19 shut everything down, Ryan Garcia was en route to a fight with Jorge Linares. It seemed like the appropriate time for such a step up in competition for Ryan.
It's a real good fucking fight.
But as we all know, COVID-19 came along, shut everything down, and there are current travel restrictions in play that prevent such a fight from happening. We don't know here and now that by the time July 4th rolls around, those travel restrictions will be lifted. Jorge Linares, he's all the way over there in Japan. And until such a time as we get conclusive answers as far as when are these travel restrictions going to be lifted, it's hardly ideal to try to do the Linares versus Garcia fight as soon as July 4th. I mean, realistically, we're only talking about a couple of weeks. That's what, 4 or 5 weeks, something like that?
It's likely why that's not happening.
That's what happened to that fucking fight. My previous video, we talked about what happened to the Abner-Mares fight, a fight that I wasn't a fan of to begin with, but better still, a fight that never got off the ground because, you know, Abner-Mares, his last fight was 2 fucking years ago at 126, and he lost that fucking fight. All right? On that fucking premise, that conversation, the Abner-Mares versus Ryan Garcia conversation, that conversation was over before it started, regardless of what barbs these guys were trading over social media. Here today, when it comes to Ryan Garcia's July 4th ring return, it seems that's been canceled. That is off as well. And I don't think that this fight date is being scrapped altogether due to a scarcity of opponents as a result of the travel restrictions or an inability to stage cards, because cards are happening, or at least cards are set to happen.
Then what's the problem?
Put simply, what I think is causing this cancellation, at least for Ryan, is money. Or a lack thereof. Ryan's ring return was set to go down, what, July 4th? We don't know that by July 4th it's going to be safe to stage big fights in front of big crowds yet. So the only kind of fights you can have in the near future are fights without an audience, in the absence of a live audience, in the absence of a live gate. There's only so much money you can make in the absence of a live gate. I'm of the opinion, and I could be wrong, that if this fight date has been scrapped by Ryan Garcia, it's because Ryan doesn't feel it's worth his while. It's not because he can't find a dance partner. He's got that Hector Tanahara guy in his comments, calling him out, telling him to sign the contract. Granted that the current travel restrictions significantly limit the pool of options as far as what opponents are available
to fight
for Ryan. That bit of it is true, but you can always work with what you've got. It's just for Ryan, maybe that's not enough. Maybe it's not worth his while. Maybe he just doesn't get out of bed for that kind of situation, and he'd rather wait it out a little longer, make his ring return later on in the year when he can stage a fight in front of an audience of some kind. I think that's what's going on with Ryan. I mean, you'll notice that when other fighters are set to be making their ring return in the near future, they're not making their ring return as soon as July 4th.
Not yet.
You know, There are reports circulating that Devin Haney is set to be fighting Luke Campbell in his very next fight. But that fight ain't set to go down on July 4th. The same applies to Vasyl Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez. Their unification fight, that match, that's not set to be going down July 4th.
That one's towards the end of the summer.
By that time, perhaps certain travel restrictions will be lifted. Perhaps by that time, public gatherings will be allowed to where you can stage a fight in front of a live audience, a live gate, perhaps by that time. But by July 4th, well, it's a little bit too soon. We don't know with an absolute certitude that in the coming 2, 3, or 4 weeks, they're going to lift these travel restrictions and they're going to lift these COVID-19 provisions to where you can stage a fight in front of a bunch of people. We don't know that.
And that's the difference.
That any fight set to be going down anytime in the near future is a fight that's happening in the absence of a live gate, in the absence of an audience, and what revenue that yields. And that's my best guess. I could be completely wrong. I could be way off. It could be something else entirely. But looking at this thing, all the particulars, the time frame that all this stuff was supposed to be going down, and now it's not, my best guess is that, it's got something to do with the money. Either way, we'll find out what's at the root of the issue here, as we often do. Moving on, in heavyweight news, Dillian Whyte slams Fury, erupts over Arum's talk of delaying mandatory shot. Arum believes the coronavirus pandemic, which shelved boxing for several months, is reason enough to push back or even cancel previously issued mandatory orders.
We'll be talking to the organizations to eliminate mandatories or to postpone them all for at least 1 year. I'm sick and tired of being forced with my marquee fighters to fight meaningless fights against mandatories that mean nothing. I won't denigrate Dillian Whyte, but the fact that he's a mandatory means nothing to me. If he fought Fury in the U.S., it would be the same as Fury fighting Otto Wallin. It means nothing. All boxing promoters and organizations have to get together to get things rolling at the highest level. Then we'll worry about mandatories.
Arum is talking rubbish. If he represented me, he'd be screaming that this is the biggest travesty in the history of boxing. Nearly 1,000 days as number one without being given a shot, whereas Tyson Fury barely scraped by the WBC's number 31 ranked Otto Wallin in front of only 3,500 people and then got gifted my mandatory position without fighting in an eliminator. Never mind a final eliminator, Whyte told Sky Sports. Fury won the belt off that pathetic hype job Deontay Wilder, as his legs were too weak to carry it any longer after running away from me for years, and it now looks like the two of them are in a relay. The WBC had originally agreed that the winner of Wilder Fury 2 had to fight me by May 2020. Now Wilder's injured, and Arum's trying to delay my shot further. It's all wrong, and it's nothing to do with COVID-19. If he was fit to fight, they could fight in July. Who cares if they don't have an audience? Big deal. Both of them had fought most of their careers with hardly any audience. I've been ranked number one since 2017 and have fought more top 15 contenders than Wilder and Fury combined. I'm the Ring Magazine number 2 ranked heavyweight in the world. Higher than Wilder. No one is mentioning me as they are scared of fighting me. 100%. I can beat Fury. He knows it, and that's why he doesn't want to face me. We have history. He has run in the past, and he's running scared now. The WBC should order Fury to fight me next, but I don't think the gypsy coward will. After all, he was previously ordered by the WBC to fight me, but he ran away, even when they met his demand of putting the diamond belt on the line. Now, the idea that Bob Arum speaking to the WBC could result in the WBC canceling all mandatories on the premise that we've all lost about 2.5 months as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. That proposition, even by the WBC standards, I don't think it's very likely to get off the ground, because at minimum, that's what we lost. A portion of March, the whole of April, and the whole of May, with boxing coming back and making its return
in June.
You can't postpone all these mandatories, all these mandates for 12 months on the premise of having lost 2.5 months. That makes absolutely no sense.
It's ridiculous.
Quite honestly, I don't know that there are many ways left for the WBC to continually delay Dillian Whyte's title shot without running the risk of legal ramifications.
Because that's where it's at.
The WBC themselves decided that in February of 2021, Dillian Whyte will be due his title shot. And they came to this decision quite openly. So it would be rather egregious, even by their standards, to go back on their word in this situation when Dillian Whyte has been waiting and will have been waiting over 1,000 days to get a title shot he should have got a long time ago. I don't think that the WBC has very many more ways to delay Dillian Whyte's title shot.
Doesn't look like it.
Regardless of what Bob Arum wants, and as far as Bob's aversion to mandatory, stifling his plans for his marquee fighters. Lest we forget, he is using that same mandatory process to get his man, Kubrat Pulev, a title shot.
Did you forget?
If it wasn't for the mandatory process, Anthony Joshua would have no reason, no need, no obligation to fight your guy, Kubrat Pulev. So I question how authentic Bob Arum's aversion to mandatories and that entire process, I question how genuine his aversion to that process actually is. It seems he's only got a problem with it when it's his guy's responsibility, but when it's someone else's responsibility, he actually uses it to his advantage, uses it to his benefit.
Hypocrite.
Because you hate mandatory so fucking much, right? That's why you're pushing for a mandate yourself when it comes to your guy Pulev. So another boxing promoter is promoting double standards and is being a big fat fucking hypocrite. What else is new? It's boxing, right?
Right.
But there is something to be addressed when it comes to Bob Arum's aversion to his guy Tyson Fury having to satisfy his mandatory in Dillian Whyte. There is something to be addressed there. You see, this aversion that Bob Arum has to Fury having to meet that obligation could result in Tyson Fury being made a franchise champion. That's right. And this scenario, when it comes to it, is not as prevalent a conversation as it should be, because this is essentially what Bob Arum resorted to when it came to his guy Vasyl Lomachenko. I talked about it in a previous video, and I'll leave the link to that video in the description box, how Bob Arum, he was averse to getting into a bidding war when it came to his guy Vasyl Lomachenko and what was then his mandatory,
$1 million Crolla.
Anthony Crolla. It's not all, folks. His guy Vasyl Lomachenko had yet another mandatory to satisfy in Devin Haney, and it was at that point that the people over there at Top Rank decided to petition for franchise status to thereby circumvent all mandatories, as franchise champions don't have them. Bob Arum, he's a sink-or-swim guy who drives a hard bargain, the kind of guy who's not in the business of giving things away. So when I think of this kind of guy, this kind of character, this kind of temperance, I struggled to conjure that Bob Arum would actually even pay Dillian Whyte step-aside money to stay the mandatory. You think Bob would actually do that?
Not if he's got a cheaper alternative.
In the realm of step-aside fees, what's it going to cost him to get Dillian Whyte to step aside versus what's it going to cost him to petition the WBC to make Tyson Fury a franchise champion? Which one of those two propositions is the more expensive proposition? And I dare say it's paying Dillian Whyte to step aside. We don't know what kind of compensation Dillian Whyte is looking for, but given how this guy's been going on and on and on about how he's due a title shot, it's going to take a pretty penny to get this guy to step aside. Perhaps a prettier penny than the people over there at Top Rank are willing to give him.
A gorgeous one.
Who's to say that the people over there at Top Rank won't petition the WBC to make Tyson Fury a franchise champion? That is not only possible, it is probable and plausible. Because they've done it before.
And they could very well do it again.
When it comes to Tyson Fury, I happen to think it's actually something that he might be on board with. You know, Tyson Fury might run around calling himself the lineal champion, one of the oldest traditions in the sport of boxing, the lineage that goes all the way back to the beginning.
To the first heavyweight champion.
Oh, he might stand for ceremony when it comes to that title, but I'm not completely convinced he's going to stand for ceremony when it comes to the trinkets. The trinket itself, the WBC title.
That one.
Title of World Champion.
He'll still have the Ring Magazine belt.
And he would still be considered, at least by some, as the heavyweight division's reigning lineal champion. Even in the absence of the WBC title and all the other alphabet titles. Still have those two things going for him.
So needs to be a world champion.
When you can be a franchise champion.
I'm telling you.
I mean, Vasyl Lomachenko is, right? So's Canelo Alvarez.
He was the first.
Boy, that'd really muck things up now, wouldn't it? If Tyson Fury were to be elevated, that's what you want to consider it.
Yeah.
Elevated.
Okay.
To franchise status, and then Dillian Whyte were subsequently elevated to world champion. In that situation, Dillian Whyte would be the only one with a version of the WBC title that can be fought for. A version of the title that can be won, lost, or defended in combat. In this situation, unified. The franchise designation, that's status. That can't be won or lost in combat. You can't beat a franchise champion to be a franchise champion. That right is reserved exclusively to the WBC.
They decide.
This is per their own rules. So the way that affects the heavyweight picture, the next undisputed heavyweight champion, that process would go from being a one-step process to where all you gotta do is get Joshua and Fury in the ring to a two-step process. That's right. Anthony Joshua would have to fight Dillian Whyte for a second time to pick up the WBC, and he would subsequently have to fight Tyson Fury to pick up the Ring Magazine and lineal status thereafter.
That's how that breaks down.
Given some of Tyson Fury's recent comments that he's held every single world title there is to hold, that's actually true. In a manner of speaking, Tyson Fury has held the WBC, the WBO, the IBF, and the WBA. He just never held them at the same time. But those kinds of comments lead me to believe that Tyson Fury doesn't actually stand for ceremony when it comes to holding all the belts at the same time. As far as he's concerned, he's one and done. Then I think of Tyson Fury's more recent comments that he wants to surpass Canelo Alvarez, surpass Floyd Mayweather Jr. in terms of earning power. How would one go about doing that? What bargaining chips does Tyson Fury actually have that could see him setting on such a path?
Well,
The most that I can think of is the undisputed title fight itself. He'd use that as a bargaining chip. He would use that as leverage.
he doesn't actually need all the belts to do it.
The Ring Magazine title and his lineal status would be enough that there is still a dispute in the heavyweight division. He doesn't actually need the WBC's Alphabet World title to still stifle that process and effectively use the heavyweight championship fight itself as a bargaining chip to earn buku fucking dollars. The bottom line here is, all these aforementioned factors, everything I just described, is not only probable, it's plausible, because we're well past possible. This could actually happen.